beginning of this teen horror book I just wrote. I'm sorry, Midsummer Night's Dream. It starts out with sort of a 1960 typical horror movie with 6 kids. Their car breaks down, they're in the middle of a forest, there's nowhere to go, they start walking in the dark, and they come to a big abandoned house. And it's just your typical, you know, trapped in a big old house. A few seconds later, they stood in the front entryway. Sue fumbled on the wall, found a light switch, and clicked it. She uttered a cry of surprise as bright ceiling lights flashed on high above their heads. "Nice," Tony declared, gazing around. Beyond the hall stood a huge front room filled with old-fashioned armchairs and couches. Darlene shook her head. "Is this the Ritz? The guy who owns this place has got to be a millionaire." "Anyone here?" Randy shouted. His voice rang through the empty rooms. They moved through the front room into a large library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, through another hallway into a long dining room, turning on lights as they went. Cindy tossed back her blonde hair and squinted down the length of the oak dining room table. "This room, it's bigger than the lunchroom at school." She slid out a heavy, tall-back chair and sat down at the table. "Somebody serve me dinner. I'll have pheasant under glass." Sue raised her eyes to the ceiling. She was surprised to see 2 old-fashioned looking swords, like pirate swords, crisscrossed high above the table. They were suspended in the air on thin cords, halfway between the table and the high ceiling. "Far out," she murmured. "This is the strangest house. Why are those swords over the table?" She sat down next to Cindy. Darlene and Tony lingered near the door. They wrapped their arms around each other. Tony pressed Darlene against the wall. Darlene held the back of Tony's head with both hands and kissed him. Long, wet kisses. "Hey, this is the 60s. Hey, break it up, sex maniacs." You know, this is the serious part. Randy called. "Did you forget we're not moving in here? We came to find help, remember?" Tony edged Darlene out of his way and came storming toward Randy. "I'm tired of you being in my business," he growled. "You've been on my back the whole trip." Randy didn't retreat this time. "Man, I don't know what your problem is. I was just saying." He didn't get to finish. Tony took a swing at it. Randy ducked and the punch sailed over his head. "Hey, cool it, man!" The others cried out as Tony's next punch caught Randy in the pit of his stomach. Brian dove forward to pull Tony back. Randy folded up, grabbing his middle and groaning. He staggered back into the long serving cabinet. The impact of his body against the dark wood cabinet sent it thudding into the wall. A shadow moved over the dining room table. Overhead, the dangling sword started to swing. One of them slipped from its cord and sailed straight down. Cindy opened her mouth in a shrill squeal. The sword came slicing down. They all heard a squish. Cindy screamed, cut off with a gurgle. Oh my God, Sue shrieked. The room rang with shrill cries of horror. Eyes bulging, Cindy raised a bloody stump. Her hand had been cut off cleanly at the wrist. It sat in front of her on the tabletop, thumb and fingers outstretched like a small white crab. Oh my God. Bright red blood began to spurt from Cindy's open wrist. It squirted high in the air, splashing onto the table. You know, it's a living. Cindy screamed and screamed, waving the stump in front of her. Sue turned and tried to hug her. Blood splattered the front of her skirt. Grunting and groaning like a hurt animal, Cindy toppled off the chair and collapsed to the floor. Silent now, she didn't move. The others rushed to her. Only Darlene held back. Get something to wrap around her arm. We have to stop the bleeding. Too late, Sue told him. Too late. I think she's dead. The cries rang through the enormous room. She can't be. Oh my God, no, please no. We have to get help, Randy said. We've got to call the police. There has to be a phone. Did anyone see a phone? Maybe in the kitchen, Sue suggested. Cindy's blood was darkening on the front of Sue's clothes. They stumbled to the kitchen door at the far end of the dining room. Randy got there first. Yes, a wall phone. He lifted the receiver and put it to his ear. His face appeared to collapse. No dial tone. It's dead. He studied the phone. Hey, the cord has been cut. I don't like this, Sue stammered. Her whole body trembled. We need to think. I'm like in shock. It's hard to think straight, Randy said. Maybe it's because I'm starving. How can you think about food? How can you think about food when Cindy's lying there dead? Brian put a hand on Sue's shoulder. I think Randy's right. We'll think more clearly if we have something to eat. So they're in the kitchen. He says, found something, he shouted. He pulled out a loaf of bread. He raised it for the others to see. He turned to the counter. Look, a toaster. See what's in the fridge. Any butter? He walked toward a silver toaster on the counter. Tony blocked his path. I'm warning you, man, and I'm warning you, man, Randy grunted. They had a short staring contest. Finally, Tony backed off. Okay, whatever you say, make your toast. Randy slid 2 slices of bread into the toaster. He started to push the lever down. He gasped at the loud electronic buzz. A bright flash of light burst from the toaster. Darlene let out a shriek. Sue and Brian stumbled back. Randy's whole body jerked wildly as a jagged bolt of white electricity crackled up his arm, then around his shoulder and head. The electricity roared as it swept over him. Randy's body jolted and thrashed. He opened his mouth in a shriek of pain, but his cry was drowned out by the crackling, roaring electrical charge from the toaster. The white hot jagged bolts of current shot around his head, his shoulders, his whole body. Randy's face started to burn. The roar of the powerful jolts grew deafening. His arms flew straight up. Trapped inside the burning, crackling power charges, Randy started to do a wild dance. His arms swung above his head. His legs bent and kicked. The pain of the electrical jolts forced him to dance. The electrical shock had killed him, but it kept him dancing. Jolt after jolt, his arms flailing, his legs bobbing and bending. A crazy, horrifying dance. A dance of the dead.